You may think you know Lofoten. Golden beaches under the midnight sun, dramatic peaks rising straight out of turquoise water, fishing villages that look almost too perfect to be real, red cabins, white sandy bays, jagged mountains, and those long, endless days. But that's the summer story. Winter in Lofoten is something completely different. The colours shift, the pace slows down, and the whole landscape becomes quieter, moodier, and much more Arctic. It's a completely different way of experiencing these wonderful islands, and for me, it's possibly the most magical time of year, but it comes with some big caveats. Our winter story begins in Leknes, where I arrived after a huge overnight snowfall. Fresh powder covered the mountains and even the rooftops along the harbour. It was one of those mornings where the air feels crisp and the light feels soft, and everything looks like it's been dusted with icing sugar. And I'll be honest, part of my excitement comes from the scenery, yes, but part of it comes from simply arriving at all. Me and Lofoten, well, our schedules don't always line up. On one cruise, I missed Leknes entirely. On another trip with Havila, I missed both Stamsund and Svolvær due to the weather. So stepping off the ship in Leknes this time felt like a small personal victory before the day of sightseeing had even begun. Winter travel in Lofoten always has an element of uncertainty. Snow, ice, short daylight hours, and long distances mean you can't always rely on buses, taxis, or good weather. So for this trip, I joined an organised excursion through the ship. One of the most popular tours went to Henningsvær, but having been there recently, I chose to go somewhere different, somewhere I hadn't been in many, many years, and certainly never in the winter, the Lofoten Viking Museum. It felt like the right choice for the weather, and I knew the surroundings would look spectacular in the snow. And, well, they did. The museum is built on the site of the largest Viking longhouse ever discovered in Norway. A fresh blanket of snow had settled over Leknes and the surrounding hills, which made the walk up to the longhouse a little tricky and very authentic. This is not the original building, of course, it's a reconstruction, but it's built right next to the archaeological site where the remains of the longhouse were found. Those are remains that caused a huge stir when they were uncovered a few decades ago. Vikings in the Arctic of Norway? Yes, there really were. Stepping inside the reconstructed longhouse, you're greeted by firelight, carved beams, and the thick smell of wood smoke. A guide told us the story of the Arctic Vikings, the chieftains who would have lived here, and most importantly, why they settled in what even today feels like one of the most remote corners of Norway. Agriculture and trade were key elements to survival here. This was a hub, a place of power, and the longhouse was both a home and a statement. There's plenty to see inside, and even a bit of fun to be had too. When we stepped outside, well, the weather had shifted once again. This spectacular late morning sunrise broke through the clouds, while somehow, at the same time, we were being battered by wind and snow. It was chaotic, beautiful, and very Lofoten. Before heading back to the bus, there was a chance for a look around the indoor exhibits and a chance to warm up with a hot drink and a quick bite to eat. On the way back to Leknes, we stopped at this bright red wooden church in Gravdal. It sits right by the fjord, and with the fresh snowfall, it looked like a postcard scene. Built in 1905 in a striking neo-Gothic style, Leknes Church is one of the most recognisable churches in the north. In winter, it looks especially dramatic, with the surrounding hills fading into white and the fjord just a few steps away. I had time for a quick look inside as well. The interior is warm and simple with wooden beams, soft light, and small details that remind you just how important these churches have been to coastal communities for generations. It was a peaceful stop and a beautiful contrast to the wind and the snow outside. Back at the port, I chose to take the shuttle bus into Leknes for a quick look around. And here's the honest truth, there isn't a huge amount to do in Leknes, especially in mid-November. It's a functional town, not a sightseeing stop. But it's good, of course, to grab a warming cinnamon bun and stock up on supplies. Which brings me to one of the most important messages in this whole video. Lofoten in the winter is absolutely worth it, yes, but you have to plan ahead. Know what you want to do, book activities in advance if you can, expect the weather to change, and be flexible because on these islands, the weather forecast is, well, it's more of a suggestion than a promise. That being said, some of my most memorable moments in the winter have been on the Norwegian coastal voyage when the weather has been less than great. But just before I show you that incredible scenery, please do check out lifeinnorway.net for more on the Lofoten Islands, the winter in Norway, and all things Norway in English. It's run by yours truly, a travel writer who's lived in Norway for 14 years now. On an earlier trip with the Norwegian coastal route, I sailed to Rafsundet in early February. The light was unreal, that deep Arctic blue that only appears for a short time in the afternoon. The mountains glow, the water turns almost silver, and everything feels both dramatic and peaceful at the same time. It was stunning and absolutely freezing. One of those I can't feel my face, but I don't care moments. It was also a terrific reward for perseverance, because only a few days previously on the northbound leg, we'd been stuck in Bodø for many hours because of this major winter storm that prevented us seeing Lofoten at all. Another winter highlight on that same voyage was the evening call into Svolvær, the biggest town on the Lofoten Islands. Because the ship arrives in the evening, the town lights reflect on the snowy harbour and the mountains tower above everything, barely visible. I joined an organised trip to Lofotpils, the local brewery, which was great fun and a perfect warm-up after being outside. After that, there was just enough time for a quick walk around Svolvær. The snow was perfect for snow angels, which several very enthusiastic passengers took full advantage of. Svolvær in the winter feels cozy in a way that it just doesn't quite get to in the summer. Lit windows, quiet streets, and mountains disappearing into the darkness. And although it's not part of Lofoten itself, I have to mention Skjellsundet, the narrow 50-kilometre long strait that splits the mainland and Hinnøya Island. On my most recent trip, we sailed through the strait in broad daylight, and the scenery, well, it was just breathtaking. Sharp ridges, quiet forms tucked into the snow, and this soft Arctic light that made everything seem almost painted on. It felt very much in the spirit of Lofoten, dramatic, remote, and unmistakably northern. It was one of those stretches where you stop talking, wrap up warm, step outside on deck, and just take it all in. And of course, winter in the Lofoten Islands means the Northern Lights, or at least it can do. Many people have told me Lofoten is not great for aurora because of clouds, but that's not really been my experience. The Vestfjord in particular has been especially lucky for me over the years. The sailing in and out of Narvik has delivered aurora many, many times. And the narrow Skjellsundet I mentioned earlier has given me some incredible displays too. On this most recent trip, we struck lucky again when sailing near Lofoten. If you get the lights while you're on Lofoten itself, well, you couldn't ask for a better backdrop. Now, I'm talking a lot about sailing here, but if you're planning an independent winter trip to Lofoten, here are a few things I'd suggest. Build weather flexibility into your schedule. Delays aren't unusual. Only drive if you're experienced. Winter driving is no joke. Choose a base with services. Think of Svolvær, Leknes, or even Henningsvær. Book activities ahead of time. Many guides run reduced schedules during the winter season. Bring proper winter clothing. Think warm and windproof layers. They're essential. Expect limited daylight, especially from mid-November to the end of January. And have a backup plan. Don't plan a really rigid schedule. Lofoten is beautiful year-round, but the winter, well, it reveals a completely different side to these islands. The snow, the silence, the hard edges of the landscape softened by light, the sense of isolation, the northern lights appearing above fishing villages or mountains or beaches. And those moments, like arriving in Leknes after a fresh snowfall, they just remind you you're somewhere truly special. If you're prepared and you embrace a bit of Arctic unpredictability, Lofoten in the winter is one of the most rewarding travel experiences you can have in Norway. Watch this video next for my complete guide to the Lofoten Islands, including where to go and what to see and do, whatever time of year you visit. And as always, thank you for watching.